Well, good evening. It's really good to see so many of you here after the summer holidays, and I hope you all had a wonderful break. And I want to introduce Richard Kane to you tonight. Now, I was trying to remember when I first met Richard Kane, but it probably was about 20 years ago, I think, because I was involved in marriage ministries and churches together for families in England for many, many years before we went to Scotland, and then I've come back in my current position. So I worked a lot with some of the most amazing Christian people promoting marriage in the UK. And Richard and his wife, Maria, have been, they were very much spearheading the Marriage Week in the UK for many, many years. And now I think they do it all across Europe. You'll have to correct me, Richard. I'm not sure how long you've been working across Europe with Marriage Week. And you can say when you start talking. But a few years ago, we went to the most amazing conference in Prague, and Prague was lovely anyway, but we were there with Marriage Week organizers from all over Europe. And we were so inspired to hear the creative ways they're reaching out into their communities, making a difference, gaining publicity through different sorts of very creative activities, and nurturing marriages in all kinds of ways during Marriage Week in each of the countries. So it's been really special to learn from them, to meet with the people that they work with a lot and inspire. And one of them is actually an Adventist, I don't know how quite to say his name, Petra Cinkala. Probably not quite right. So he's Czech, and he's actually at Andrews University, and he's very much behind Marriage Week in, I think, Czechoslovakia, or Czech Republic and Slovakia. So he's been spearheading it in that area, and he's very supportive of it because it's such a wonderful way to connect with our communities and to be a blessing. I think, Gabor, you've had experience with Marriage Week, haven't you? You've done projects. I've done projects. I'm not quite sure who else has. But we realize this is an important area. It's a great opportunity to inspire the marriages in our own churches and communities, as well as those around us in our communities through creative kinds of projects. So we wanted to invite Maria and Richard along tonight to tell us something more about it, how we can get involved, some of the great stories, and just to inspire us really so that we can understand how we can be part of that bigger picture. Sadly, Maria isn't well tonight, so Richard stepped in to join us, and he'll share the stories with us. So thank you, Richard. We're so glad you're here, and take it away. Do you want to share a PowerPoint, or you just want to talk?
I'm just going to talk and show you a few photographs. I think, well, first of all, thank you for that very warm welcome and invitation. Very kind and generous of you to speak so warmly. And it is true that Peter Sinkala from the Czech Republic, who is an Adventist, he was a real early adopter of Marriage Week. You know, I met him at a conference for the European Evangelical Alliance in Portugal, and he's a great guy, and he really understood the vision straight away and adopted it. And I remember him saying, "Would you come to Prague and tell us how to do all this?" You see, and I said, "Well, I can come and tell you what I know, which isn't that much, you know," which I did, and we became great friends, and that's well over 20 years now. And even though he's now based in the States, he's still on the organizing group for the project in Czech, and so that's great history there. But I just want to, you know, I'm not a teacher really, and I'm not a theologian, but I can tell you my story really, which is what I'd like to do. And the story begins with myself and Maria. Isn't she beautiful? This is back in 1987. And I don't know if you can see that, okay. So we've been in missions. We've been in Youth with a Mission, which is an interdenominational international mission. We married. We really wanted to change the world, you know. Of course, suddenly you discover that's harder to do than you might imagine. So on we went, you know. And then about a few years into our marriage, I got a job as director of a charity that was attempting to connect up all the marriage support ministries in the UK into a network. And we did that, you know, and I worked at that job. I was away a lot, but in the UK, and gathered all these groups together and then connected in with all the existing marriage support ministries. And at that time, in the UK, there was a lot of smaller organizations who were really good at doing sort of training weekends, residential weekends where couples would go on these weekends and learn communication skills and how to forgive each other and, you know, get a vision for their marriage and things. And so all this activity was going on. And then a friend of mine, John, he split up from his wife. And I was a bit irritated by this because I'd been at the wedding. It'd been a big wedding in church and everybody was there and it looked great. They looked really happy. And suddenly they were falling apart. So I took him out and I said, what's going on? Are you fighting with each other? Are you arguing? Is there somebody else involved? And he sat there and he said to me, no. He said, it's just like all the pressures in life, pressures for housing, for careers, for children, or for money, for aspiration. He said, all those pressures have squeezed all the life out of the love that we had. And now there's nothing left. And I sat there and I thought, I wonder how many other people are just like him. You know, they want to do well, they want it to work, but they just get sidetracked by the pressures in life. And so I thought, I wonder if we could do something that would be an aid memoir, like an encouragement to the nation that aimed at couples who have made marriage as a life choice, to say, if you're fortunate enough to be in a marriage, you should look after it. And here are some ways to help you to do that. So we don't want to persuade anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. And we're not against anybody. You know, we're just ridiculously positive, saying, well, we're just going to encourage people who've made this as a life choice. So because I had this particular role, this job, I was able to call a meeting, you see. And I called a meeting and all these organizations, they all came along, you see. And I was young, you know, I was under 40, you know. And they said, well, what do we want to do? And I explained what I've just explained to you. And they said, that's a great idea. And then I said, well, if are you up for it? You know, we'll do something really positive. And they said, well, if you do it, Richard, we'll support you. You see it. And because I was a bit younger, a bit more stupid, I thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea. So we decided to call it National Marriage Week. And we said that what we'd do is we'd get as many churches as we could to identify with the week. And we'd say the week was around Valentine's Day because there'd be just interest in romance at that time anyway. And what we tried to do is to mobilize the media to get involved and to do a positive thing on marriage instead of negative. So they all said, that sounds like a great idea. Off we go. We made a video, you know, we made a workbook with everybody's contact details. This was before the digital age. This is probably 1996, 97. And then they said, this is great, you know, we're behind you. And then if you just fast forward to 3 weeks before the first ever National Marriage Week, and I have a meeting with all these people, and they say, well, you know, we're booked up, we're speaking here, we're speaking there, what's going on? And I said, well, you know, we've got about 500 churches have all agreed to do something. And we're not saying what they have to do. We're just saying just identify with the brand, I suppose. And they said, well, that's fantastic. I said, well, I know it's good, but I said, I've told everybody it's going to be media as well. And they said, yeah. I said, but the media isn't going to work because we haven't done anything about media. And we don't know how you do things like that, you know, and so it's not going to happen. And they said, well, if you've got 500 churches to do anything simultaneously, that's a major achievement. You should go home and put your feet up. So I did go home, and I was working from the garage in my house at the time because we didn't have a lot of money. And I went home, and then a couple of days later, I got this phone call. And at the end of the phone call, I said to Maria, I said, our lives will never be the same again. And she said, well, what's happened? I've just had the most amazing phone call. And she said, well, who was it? I said, the lady, she called me. She introduced herself as the first assistant to a particular minister in the government. And I said, and she said, and what did she ask you? She said, are you doing anything to launch your National Marriage Week in London? Because we've heard about this. And I said, no. And she said, well, Mr. Kane, if we, which is the government, if we put on an event in your name, in the name of National Marriage Week, and if we invited all the media to come, bearing in mind this was a massive vacuum, we invited all the media to come, and we invited all the organizations that work with families to attend. And if we put on a lunch afterwards, and if we take your logo and have it blown up so that's the backdrop on the stage, and we do everything for you, and the minister makes a speech at it, will you be free to host it? Which was extraordinary. So, of course, I said, well, I'll just check my diary, see if I'm free on that day. You know, we had a bit of a joke. And then I went to see these ladies, these officers in Whitehall in London. And I said to them, there was a table, I'm on this side and they're on their side. And they said, well, Mr. Kane, you'll step forward and then the minister will come behind you and you'll sit here and then you'll introduce him, all the protocols. And then I remember I said, well, hold on a minute. I said, I've been doing a bit of homework here and I've discovered that this minister, the Lord Chancellor, he's really important. So he's in charge of all the judiciary, you know, the law in the United Kingdom. He's the Speaker of the upper house, the House of Lords, and he's in the cabinet of the Prime Minister. So he's a pretty important guy. And they said, yeah, that's right. And I said, we're just a little charity. We're so small. I'm working from my garage at home and it doesn't even have a window. So I said, why are you doing this? You know? And she said, well, she looked at her pals like this, like, oh, we weren't expecting this. And she got her finger out and she pointed at me and she said, but Mr. Kane, you are National Marriage Week. And Her Majesty's government wants to do this with you. You see? So I just thought, for a moment, I thought, they really believe it exists, you know, because at that moment in time, it was just a concept, you know, it had never happened. I thought I've fooled Her Majesty's government into thinking something exists when it doesn't really. But anyway, I said, well, I thought of Mary, the mother of Jesus, you see. And I said, well, let's, if that's what's going to happen, let's make it happen then, you see. And so so then they organized this amazing event and the media all turned up. And of course, I'd never encountered anything like this before. There was TV crews and journalists all asking for comment and like, why are you doing a National Marriage Week? Why is that important? And so I said, well, you know, it's to be an aid memoir to people who encourage couples. And often the journalists would come along, they'd be really scoffy and they'd be like, why do we need a National Marriage Week? And I said, it's just to encourage people who've made this as a life choice, to encourage them to invest in their marriage. What's wrong with that? And they'd go, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I said, exactly. We're not against anything. We're just for couples that have made this as life choice. Is there anything wrong? No, there's nothing wrong with that. And they'd all their arguments would just dissolve before them, which was great fun. So we did that, and on the Tuesday, the first ever National Marriage Week. And then I remember on the way home, on the train, I thought, oh, I wonder if we could do something with the Prime Minister, you know. I wonder if you could do that. So in the morning, I phoned, I did that thing like you do on the movies. You pick up the phone and you go, get me Downing Street. Which was great fun. So I did that. And I spoke to like a press officer and I said to him, look, because it had been in all the papers the day before and on the telly, on the news. I said, did you see this story? And he said, yes. I said, well, we as National Marriage Week would like to present 12 red roses to the Prime Minister and his wife on Valentine's Day from National Marriage Week UK. And the guy was like, oh, you would you? And I said, yeah, I think it'd be great. Your government's really involved already, so why not? So he was like, oh, well, you know, and he was pretty unimpressed. But I knew there was an election coming up, you see. So I called the Labour Party, you see, the opposition, and I said pretty much the same, you see. And they said, they said, "Oh, can you fax over some more information?" You see, this is how long ago. So I faxed over some information, then I waited till 5 o'clock, and then I called this guy in Downing Street back, and I got straight through to him, and he said, "Yes, what is it?" I said, "Well, listen, I just want to bring something to your attention." So he said, "What is it?" I said, "Well, I said, I spoke to you this morning, and I said, you're kind of not interested, but you need to know that we've also spoken to the Labour Party, and they've asked for more information." And then I just stopped talking, you see, and I just held the phone. And he goes like, "Right, quick, what? Well, what's your mobile number?" Like, so I gave him the number, and then he called me straight back. And he said to me, "Right, it's all on. 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 Downing Street. I've got the Prime Minister and his wife. You need to come with 12 red roses and a woman, preferably your wife." So then we pitched up, you see. Here's the next photo. Can you see? And we presented them with these. I know this isn't digital, but somehow it's quite nice to go old school sometimes, isn't it? You know. And anyway, there you are. That's the Prime Minister and Norma and Maria, my wife, and me. Perhaps you don't recognize me because I've got hair there. So, and my friend who was a trustee of the organisation, David Hodson, who was a divorce lawyer. So on the occasions when I went with him, we met people like this. We'd have the little meeting, you know, and then he'd go, "Now, Richard," he'd go, I have to fly now because I'm in the middle of divorcing somebody." And then he'd be off. It's quite funny, you know, the paradox. And so we did that. And then in the next year, we did the same thing with the Blairs. Do you remember them? Tony Blair and Sherry, as this time inside. And they're so nice to us. And so this thing began to build momentum as an annual kind of event, you know, and there was an expectation, and instead of the government putting on an event in London, we started organizing our own event, and that developed into a conference, and that, you know, we'd have quite a few hundred people there, you know, and that was quite exciting. And then we'd start to get additional speakers in, so we'd get like a minister from the government, and then we'd get like a favorite was the former chief rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who was just lovely, you know, and he'd come along at the drop of a hat, and he'd say, of course, it was all, you know, it wasn't untrue, but he was just, he'd say, "National Marriage Week is my favorite week of the year," you know, and then he'd talk about him and his wife, you know, and all the journalists would be there, and he would just dissolve them, you know, they just stop writing and just listen to, you know, 5,000 years of biblical wisdom incarnate in this man, you know. And then we'd have the Catholic cardinal, and then, you know, archbishops, and everybody wanted to get involved, you know. And then what started happening was, and then we did on the third year, got this photo here, we did this, and you won't know who these people are, but this is William Hague. He was the leader of the opposition, and this was his wife Fionn, and this was the first time they did anything after their wedding, and so they turned up to the launch of Marriage Week Year 3 in Westminster Registry Office, and there was so many journalists. We couldn't fit them all in the room, and I made them wait outside, which just like, as a Christian trying to do something, you're normally scratching around for exposure, but it's just like it was the other way around, you know, and it was enormous fun and exciting. And then what happened then was people started to contact us from other countries who'd heard about this project, and they started contacting, and they said, "Oh, could you help us to do this where we are?" And one of them was the chap I mentioned earlier, the Adventist, Peter Sincala. So we did a pilot in the Czech Republic, and that went very well. And at the same time, we did a pilot in Switzerland, which went well. And so the project started maturing into something that, had a very much a local expression. So in churches and community halls and uh, any place, people would just host a marriage week event, and that might be a meal with a speaker. It might be teaching from the Bible. It might be teaching from a secular end. It might be people would bring along their photos from their weddings, and they'd hold them all up, and people would try and guess how long they'd been married. And always we were completely unprescriptive about what you have to do, because I believe that if you prescribe like a curriculum, like a teaching program, it becomes linear. So everything has to go along that mode. Whereas if you step back from that and you say, well, the values are X and Y, but how you interpret that in your location is your business. We're not going to interfere with that. I think what happens then is you create a movement, because the movement is based on the values rather than a ministry of a particular person, individual, or couple. Not to say that people don't have really good ministries, as teaching and ministering, because they do, all over the place. And that's one of the other reasons why we're not prescriptive, is there are these people all over the place, who can teach and minister and help people in their marriages. And so it's not our job to prescribe, but just it's a bit like, I've often described it as like a theatre. When you go to the theatre to see a show, our job as Marriage Week is to create the stage and the backdrop. But the players that come along and perform and articulate and help couples and inspire couples, that's what we do, is we create an opportunity for them to perform really well on a larger stage. So anyway, the project then started to mature, and then we did the pilot in Switzerland and Czech Republic. They went very well. And then Hungary started, and then America, and then Ireland, and then other countries in Europe. And then a guy decided to pilot something in Australia and somebody else in New Zealand. And then we formed a Swiss association, because most international associations are Swiss, aren't they? They're just really kind of good at that. So we set that up. And so each national project affiliates with the international group. And we've got about 30 countries that run a marriage week at the moment. And then, and I've got a few photos here, which it might be hard for you to see, but this is like, this is the international team. This is at the conference that our friend was on about the other day in Prague. That's all the team there from all the different countries. This is the team in Germany, in a region of Germany, Saxony. This is the team in Ukraine. And so everywhere you go, everywhere you are, it's like it's different everywhere. It's different everywhere and the same everywhere. It's strange like that, because it's like everybody has a passion and they want to help couples to make a success of their marriages. But how they do that is different. Like in Germany, they're really organized and they're really good, and they make like the marriage week in a bag, and they put in there a CD with lovely music and some chocolates and like a teaching, and they go out on the street in the square in these towns, and they stand there with a banner saying it's marriage week and balloons, and along they come, and people love it, and all the rest of it. And then in other countries, it's like in America, it's mad in America. They've got the Catholic Church really involved. So a couple of years ago, I think there's 300 areas within the Catholic Church in the USA, and 200 of the 300 adopted National Marriage Week, and And so in schools and colleges, you know, priests running around filming everybody, going like, "What do you want to say about national marriage week?" And this is the beauty of it, because we don't control anything. You know, people have a sense of freedom and liberty about it. You know, which I find very, you know, it has a cost because it's out of control. But the upside is it's out of control. You know, so that's uh, that's how we got to where we are. It hasn't always been easy. You know, we've had some difficult experiences as well along the way, like all things like this. You know, it's not always a walk in the park. But I think, I think, I think I'd like to say now I've told you all that. You know, a couple of the key things that why I think this is really important is I think relationship health um, is a key need of contemporary society and people in advanced economies. So in areas where, you know, we're not hungry for food, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, we're mostly okay. You know, the importance of relational health becomes much more important and potent. So I think that I think as Christians in Western democracies, you know, it's really a good way to try to meet the needs of modern people. Just to have a relational agenda is really important. One of the other things I want to stress is any couple that marry, you know, they really want to make it a success. You know, they don't get married thinking like, oh, we're doomed. This is going to end in tears. You know, they want it to work. And often to make it work, what they need is just a little bit of help. You know, they don't need a 16-week course necessarily. You know, perhaps they just need a little bit of encouragement, just a little bit of a direction, a little bit of a meeting that might sound like, you know, in the first years of our marriage, we had that problem as well. And helps them to appreciate that, well, we're not alone. You know, this is normal. Because what we tend to do is we all pitch up at the wedding and everybody goes, "Oh, aren't they sweet?" Pat them on the back, and then they're on their own, you know, trying to sort this out and to make it into something that they imagine it's going to look like. So I think that's really important. I think uh, I think it's a great project because it is out of control. And I know as Christians, and I am obviously a Christian, we have a tendency to feel like we have a God-given right to control anything that crosses our desks, you know. But I just kind of think like I'd rather have, and of course that means if it's out of control, that sometimes people do things that you might not like. But I would rather have 80%, which is really good, of a lot, and 20% that perhaps is worthless, than 100% of hardly anything that I have control over. So, you know, I'm a great libertarian. I think let everybody have a go, you know, and also, you know, across the globe, you know, what they do for Marriage Week in Hungary is going to be very different to what they do for Marriage Week in Holland. You know, completely different. The value system is completely different. So I know this talk is entitled, you know, how could I get involved in Marriage Week where I am? Well, in some places around the world, people have started really small, you know, and they've just gone really small, and it's just built and built and built. And I'm interested to notice one of the you guys on the call here are from Slovenia. Slovenia, I would love to see a marriage week in Slovenia because it would go really well. And it's like, it's a very conservative and Christian environment, you know, and I think that would go really well. So I'd love to see that. But listen, I'm going to stop before I start to ramble on too much. I want to stop and have some questions and answers because I kind of think that's a bit more stimulating somehow. Is that okay if we jump into questions and answers now?
Yeah, that's great, Richard. Thank you for giving us the background. Some of that I didn't even know because I think I came on the scene a little way in to that, and I came along to the big things he did in London with the rabbi, and that was amazing and so inspiring for me too. And I remember when we went to Prague, hearing the stories of what some people are doing, like famous couples, and something special that happens in Vienna in Austria. I can't remember exactly the details, but I remember the couples from Austria were really, they had some amazing things they were doing, concerts and things. Is it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they do. Yeah, they do. They do concerts, and they do. They get like a comedian along, and they have an evening which they take around different cities in Austria where they have like a speaker that speaks from the Bible, and then a comedian that makes everybody laugh, and then a musician that like sings or plays or something, you know. And in Hungary, they always have a marriage week couple of the year. You know, one occasion, the husband and wife were both concert pianists, and they would just go around doing this, you know, and speak a little bit. You see, and it's because it's all about celebration and enthusiasm, you know. And just as a great encouragement in Slovakia, the project's been going in Slovakia for quite a while, and we'd always get a letter of support from the wife of the president. You know, the first lady would send a letter. And you know, that's great, that's sweet, that's not unusual, you know. Why wouldn't she do that? But last year there was a phone call from the president's office, and they said, well, we'd like to do a bit more than just send a letter. What can we do? He said. So our people went like, this is the flipping president on the phone. What should we do? And so what ended up happening was that the president and the first lady, instead of sending a letter, they made a video of themselves on the sofas, drinking coffee, talking about their own marriage. And they uploaded it on to YouTube, and they uploaded and strapped it with like, this is our talk about marriage as part of National Marriage Week Slovakia and the dates. Astonishing, you know. Well, extraordinary. And so they weren't expecting that. You know, that was just, and so that's my thing. I think because the name means something, it gives an excuse for good people to do a good thing. And what I mean by that is, for example, if there wasn't a marriage week in Slovakia, it'd be really difficult for the president and his wife to make such a video because it would be out of context, you know. But because there is a marriage week, it's entirely the right thing for them to do, and so it gives good people a reason to do a good thing.
That's great, and that's amazing. And I think what we'd like to see more of is people even just doing small things where they are. So maybe you could think of some of the small things people could do where they are. I remember a few years ago, we tried, I don't think we succeeded, but we tried in the UK to have like the biggest amount of couples renewing their vows all on one Saturday. And different churches would join in with this, and they'd invite couples. And then they would, afterwards, when they renewed their vows, they'd go and have like cake and some nice drink afterwards and celebrate together and have like a party, and also kind of be invigorated. I remember one church just collecting together the advice or the tips from all the married couples in their church, all the what's kept them together tips, and making a little leaflet to share with everybody in their community, or putting it in their parish newsletter to put through people's doors and things. And I remember Bernie and I, we would do these soulmates nights where people would come along to a hotel, and we'd have a meal in the hotel, and we'd have all sorts of fun things around the table. There would be like a list of I love you in different languages, and the couples had to try and guess which language it is and then try and say it to each other. And then we had these big red balloons, and there was a prize, and there was a number in every balloon, and you got a prize from what the number was. And so the couples would hug around this big balloon, and they had to squash it between their bodies and pop it, and then get a number, and they get a gift of some sort. And we had also we just made it really fun, and then we just slipped in there some things about the importance of friendship and fun in marriage and laughter. So that was one of the things that we did. And so things can happen at like a very small level, or in the town, or maybe in your conference. And so whatever you're capable of, I think you can just say, this is National Marriage Week. We can do something, however small, however big. We can find out who in our community has been married the longest and go and take them a bouquet of flowers and make that immediate event, and then ask them how they managed to stay together, and hope it's not something like, well, something unhelpful. But usually they have some good things to say if they've been married for 60 odd years. So just think about simple things that people can do. It doesn't have to be anything supernatural and big and flashy with the president. You can all make a difference where you are. And Richard, do you have some more stories of that from like the kind of the more local events that people can do?
Well, yeah, I mean, the smallest event is like in a few of the cities in Europe, you know, a couple have gone to a bridge with a padlock, you know, and have just declared their vows afresh, and then I've locked the padlock around the metalwork on the bridge. I've written their names on it. So obviously that's private, you know. But other things people have done, goodness, I mean, the easiest is invite your friends over for a meal in your house, and then just have a few top questions or something, you know, like and make it into like a fun, like a like a fun evening, you know. I know in Prague, you know, they hired a tram and they called it the tram of love or something, and that went round, and people would get on, and there'd be counselors on board with books and resources, and they go like, all right, so on your journey, you know, here's something to help you along the way, and then have a little chat, and then they get off, you know. They did all that. Obviously that's a bit more complex. I tend to only remember the big exciting things and forget all about the small expression. But the thing that makes the project work, I know it's kind of like exciting to talk about the president and prime minister and stuff like this, but the thing that makes it intelligent is the local expression. You know, it's about couples all over the place, in towns and villages, in village halls, and just doing something silly. And the reason why that's important is this. You know, I remember going on a marriage training weekend with Maria when we were young, and our children, it was like childcare for us was always a challenge, you know, because Maria's parents were in Sweden and my parents were elsewhere, and you know, it wasn't easy. And so to give up a whole weekend to go on a marriage thing was like quite a sacrifice, you know. And we drove there, and it was a long way on a Friday, and the traffic was terrible. We had an argument, and we got there, and it was like, oh, you know. And then we did the whole weekend, da da da. And then about a week later, Maria said to me, you know, I think I like you a bit more than I used to. He said, and I said, well, I think I like you a bit more than I used to. She said, well, what was it? What have you learned? What is it? And I said, well, I don't think it was anything except that because I was prepared to give up a weekend to invest in my marriage with you, that sends an implicit message that says, like, you're really important to me. And she said, yeah, that's the same for me. Because I did that and I didn't go to a spa weekend or something, not that she'd want to do something like that. She said the message is under the radar, but it says that I really value this marriage, this relationship I have with you. And so I learned from that you can do anything in terms of like the content for Marriage Week, and it will be successful because the same thing will apply. It's not what you learn, it's the fact that you're prepared to engage and invest your time and energy in this topic that implicitly sends that coded message, which is crucial.
Yes, thank you. I was thinking about that and how important that is when we've done events as well. And also thinking that what's different to when you started in the 1990s is we have much more like social media, and couples can just do something themselves and put something on Instagram or one of those social media sites, and make a statement in that way that can inspire other people who will just go, "Whoa, didn't realize about that. Wonder whether we could do something like that, or I wonder how that could help us as well." So I think actually I need to dig this out again. I helped to write for, I think, one of the marriage charities in Britain, 100 ways to encourage marriages around you, like conversations you could start with people on the airplane, or just to say, how long have you been married? How's it going? What's helped you stay married that long? And actually, by asking some of those questions, get people to start reflecting on their marriage in ways they might not have done so before. And also other ways to, send anniversary cards more often. And just as a reminder, we're thinking about you, a marriage is special, it's important to us as well. And how we might be able to do just some of those simple things in churches and encourage people in churches to reach out and do more of the same with their friends and communities. I'm just going to ask Gabor here, because Gabor's from Hungary and he's been doing quite a lot of work, I think, with marriage in Hungary, haven't you, Gabor? So what's been going on there? And have you had some experiences?
I was so delighted to hear Richard mentioning several times Hungary. I have the privilege to work very closely together with the Marriage Week organizer in Hungary, Kornél Herjecki. He's actually the publisher of my books.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Wow.
And so we are working in the whole country, and we are working locally as well. Also as a family ministries director in the Adventist Church. So what we are doing for the whole country with the official organizers is that they choose every year a special book, which is the official Marriage Week book, and they print it in large amounts, and they share it with people, often as a gift or for a very reduced price. And then they have a central program, and they have lots of local programs, but they have one website, and you can sign up with your local program to that central website. And there is really a lot of attention on that website. It reaches hundreds of thousands of people during that week. And the news are full, the evening news in the different TV stations. So it got a lot of attention. What we do as Adventist Church is that I develop every year a presentation with a full textbook and a PowerPoint presentation, and we share that with our pastors so they can make this presentation in their own churches or in any official building in their community. So we have one program that we do all over the country, and every church has the freedom to join it. And we have quite a lot of churches every year, more and more who join it. And so we give them an instant program so they don't have to find out on their own what to make, but they are also very creative, and we get a lot of ideas back from them.
Brilliant. I forgot to mention Poland, Poland are amazing. They've broken it all down into regional groups, each with their own Facebook and Instagram and their own agenda. And they, like you guys, they just kind of like have hundreds of thousands of subscribers onto the social media. It's astonishing,
That's excellent, isn't it? So we're hearing all sorts of ways that we can use National Marriage Week as a way to raise the awareness of marriage within our own churches and encourage couples. And actually our church and the General Conference produces material every year for, I think it's Christian Home and Marriage Week in February. So that's provided every year by the General Conference with some seminars and sermons and children's stories to get you going. So that's there for you, but you can also go back and look at material that was produced in other years and see what's there. So, and also to reach out to the communities around us and do something, however small, for some marriages in our towns, in our communities, in our villages, just to spark some awareness of how important it is to be, when we're married, to invest in it, to keep going at it. Because one of our friends in Britain, Harry Benson, that Richard knows him too, he did some research and he found that most couples, if they hang in there, things get better. So don't give up when things are really tough, because if you just hang in there, things will usually get better. And many couples who divorce wish that they'd actually stayed together, because they didn't realize just how complex it was going to be divorced, especially if they had children. And so how do we help support, mentor, strengthen, resource, give ideas to the couples that we do have? Because often they won't tell us that something's going wrong, but maybe just one small thing will help them to get over this difficulty and keep on going and find some new ways to show love to each other, even if it's just the commitment from going to a weekend and thinking, wow, if we're spending this much money on ourselves, then this is something special, and we can grow into the specialness of the investment and benefit from that. So there are many marriages around us that are struggling that we don't even know. And if we can reach out and encourage, or just have couples around for dinner and chat, or mentor the younger couples coming along, all those things can be truly excellent ways to build and grow marriages right where we are, and use Marriage Week as an opportunity to do something special. Any other thoughts from Rainer, Gabor, anybody else online, anyone else doing something with marriage in your community or in your church that's been really beneficial that we can learn from? And I'm wondering if this has sparked any ideas in you, whether you're thinking, oh, yes, maybe we could do something. Maybe we could start small and have a go. And I think if something has been sparked in you and you think, yes, let's do something for our church, for our community on marriage, and you might be not quite sure what to do, get in touch with whoever is your leader, like Rainer or I, or if you're in Hungary, then get in touch with Gabor and just say, well, look, we'd really like to do something, but we don't really know where to start. And we can help you talk through some very simple things that you can do where you are. Richard, do you have a website for National Marriage Week with ideas and things? And I'm guessing that you do.
Yeah, we do. It's www.marriage-week.org.
Okay.
That's the international one.
Can you put it in the chat or something?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll chat.
And then we can all like see it, because it's useful to know where to go and find these things. And some countries do produce materials every year for people to use and access, or some ideas anyway. And I've got some materials from the past that I still have on my computer that I can share with people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to encourage everybody, two things, if you have a go and you do something, I bet it goes really well, because it just kind of has a God thing about it. It's the audacity, really. None of us have any particular skills or money or anything like that. It just happens. And the other thing is, if you are interested, and there isn't a Marriage Week where you are, we're having our international conference, which happens every 2 years in Vienna in May 2024. So it's not too far off. It's just about 9 months, probably. You're very welcome. It's not a massive conference. There's normally about 80 odd people there, but it's mostly people that are interested or are taking responsibility for Marriage Week where they are, be it that a village or a city or a nation or whatever. So you'd be very welcome to come along, and if you just email me, I'll send you an invite. Let me just write that down here in the notes.
Yes, if you put your email in there and your website, that would be really useful. I mean, the one that we went to in Prague, Bernie and I, was such an inspiration. And we really enjoyed the conversations we had with so many other couples and individuals there, listening to all sorts of amazing stories and research. And also, I think we did some Bible study about marriage that was really inspiring as well, as I remember. So was a very special time, and Bernie and I are hoping that we might be able to get along next year, Richard. So
I hope so. Yeah, hope so
hope
too.
we can.
Yeah.
So, are there any other thoughts or questions? And hopefully the information's in the. Actually, I've got something in the way. Oh yeah, they're good. We've got the information there from you.
Karen, maybe I react just for a moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, when I came back from Andrews in 1990, 91, we started marriage weekends for a weekend, and I got connected with people who did marriage week, and I had the experience that in Germany, especially, as you said, Richard, if I may say that, Christians sometimes tend to say, we do it and we don't want to connect with others because we have the right one, the right version. This is the way we should do it. It was especially my experience in our experience in Germany. I've heard from the Czech Republic that they do something like that, and didn't hear so much from Britain. But now with the time, I got more and more involved in that, and I know that in some of our countries, in the southern countries, Italy and others, they participate. They do a lot of that. They do not have the marriage week in September right now. Some of the countries do have it in February, combined with Valentine's Day and all these things. But I think whatever is possible, do something for our marriages, because it's not, as you said, not controlling of others. It's just encouraging. And many of them said when they had weekends and something like that, they said, "Oh, it's so easy. There's so simple things. Why didn't I know before?" And so I think, as you said, just encourage people, get a little bit more, and to make them in their marriage a little bit closer, a little bit more happy. I think this is the goal that we should give. And also, maybe if I use it in Christian words, to give a little light to somebody, that they also can give light to others, and the world will be much more lighter as we have it at the moment. So this is something that I gained from that, and I'm very thankful for listening to you, how it developed and what happened. I wished in other countries that our national governments would react the same way and would help encourage. There are a lot of topics going on right now with marriages, and I think it's so important to strengthen our couples where they are. Thank you very much for your presentation tonight, for your experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well done.
Thank you, Rainer, for that as well. And I have been trying for a while, although other things keep bumping into it, to put together something a bit like Care for the Family did in the UK, which is marriage night in a box. And you've got a box with a letterbox with some treats and then some envelopes to open. Then they had a 1-hour webinar online, online. And they'd say, now they'd do some teaching, now open envelope 1 and do something, and then give you time to do it and play some nice music. And now open envelope 2. And I'm working on my own version of that. And I'd love to get that done. But every time I sort of start working on it, something else distracts me. So pray that I get the space to do that. And maybe Gabor and I can work on like a presentation, or whoever can help us, Rainer, where we put together a little work out a presentation that you could use, and then these resources will make easily translatable, so that you can translate the goodies that you put in envelopes, and you can decide whether people just download them and print them off and you do a webinar, or whether you send them out with extra goodies in little postal packs. So I hope and pray that will happen soon. It's kind of been on the back burner for a couple of years, but this has really inspired me to do something with it and get it out of our box and start again. And Gabor, if you've got any ideas to work with that, we can perhaps work together, and Rainer, so let me know. Well, thank you very much, Richard, for coming, and thank you for all those who come and listened. And I hope that each one of you has just taken away a little something that you can do in your own marriage, or with the marriages in your churches, or hopefully the marriages in your communities too, something that you can spark to give a bit of inspiration and support, that lighting the light that will light other lights around the topic of marriage, because it's a challenge. It's the most challenging thing we do, and yet it's the most amazing thing that we do as human beings, I think. So we all need a bit of encouragement with the challenges that come with marriage, and we're all blessed. When marriages flourish, then it blesses the community, I believe, because then people reach out and bless others, and kind of ripples out in waves. So I want to thank you, Richard and Maria, for all that you do, which is amazing, getting this started in such an incredible God way. And we also want to pray for Maria that she'll feel better soon. So we'll close with prayer now. If anyone wants to hang out and chat after that, then just hang on or just disappear as you like. Let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you for the gift of marriage and the gift of singleness, because not everyone is called to marriage, but we want to thank you for marriage and what it means to us and the challenges it brings. And yet, as we work through those challenges, we realize that we can grow closer to you. We grow into a deeper understanding of what love really means in action. And we learn to love each other in deeper and more meaningful ways, especially when your love is flowing into our heart. And we want to pray for the marriages in our churches, which are just as challenged as the marriages in the communities, and help us to find ways to nurture and encourage them, strengthen them, and let that love ripple out and scatter into our communities, into our society, that there is a voice there that says, you know what, marriage can be amazing. Let's just do this and give people ideas to celebrate and have fun and show love together. So we thank you for the way you've guided National Marriage Week, and Richard and Maria, bless them. We pray for Maria's health, that she'll feel better soon, and that there'll be an amazing conference next year in Vienna, Austria. Thank you for each person here, for all that they do for you, and to share your love with others and to build up families and relationships. Thank you for your love for each one of us that grows when we share it with others. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the hour I've spent with you guys. It's just lovely. You know, I feel inspired afresh. So bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for coming. It's been lovely to have you.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's great.
Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best to you.
you.